Garrick doesn't want any more Yiggerish cream pie. Deep Space Nine does its best trouble with Tribble's impression, but with tennis balls instead of tribbles. And Bashir mistook a preganglionic fiber for a postganglionic nerve on his final medical exam. When we all know those are totally different things. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Who definitely knows the difference between preganglionic fibers and postganglionic nerves, obviously.
I mean, I'm all about my ganglionic.
My name's Ryan T. Husk, and there are like 10 jokes that flew through my head when you said that. We are reviewing Deep Space Nine Season 3, Episode 18, Distant Voices, directed by Alexander Singer. Written by Mr. Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf. Also, the story is by Joe Manoski. And let's talk about him a little bit more later. I found some interesting goodies about him. How are you today?
I'm good. That's a lot of info right there. I mean,
I know.
I was going to ask you about that story by accreditation. So it's good to know that Joe Manoski, you said?
Yeah, or Manoski, but I think it's probably Manoski.
Yeah.
We can get into it right now if you want. I will say that watching this episode gave me a great idea for a fun free-for-all question at the end of our episode. So we'll talk about what that question will be a little later too. I guess first thing, we could talk about Joe Manoski. So, since last week we talked to Ethan Kalk, who pitched the idea for the previous episode. It's always interesting to see if some episodes get the story by credit, which means it was somebody that originally wrote the story, and then the Deep Space Nine writers adapted it or wrote the screenplay for it. And Joe Manoski here has quite the resume. Not only has he written or done the story for 4 Deep Space Nine episodes, and actually wrote Dramatis Personae, an episode we did in like the first or second season. He did write that one, the teleplay. Same thing with Rivals, which we did recently. This one, Distant Voices, he did story by, and a few years later, a few seasons down the line, he also did Time's Orphan. But he's also done like 30 Star Trek Next Generation episodes. Let's see. Like 30 Next Generation episodes, and it looks like about another 30 or so Voyager episodes too. Wow. So this guy's done a ton. For those of you at home, very quickly, he was executive story editor on a ton of episodes on Next Generation, but what really jumps out are the actual story by and teleplay by, meaning he wrote the story and wrote the script for Time's Arrow, which is a 2-parter, really cool, 1 and 2. He also wrote Darmok, which is a very famous and beloved Star Trek Next Generation episode. He also did Interface, Masks, Emergence, Suspicions, The Chase, a few really good ones. Voyager, he did Unimatrix 0, 1, and 2, which we all know and love. That's a pretty solid one. And a bunch of other big ones. Equinox, parts 1 and 2, some big 2-parters. Muse, Good Shepherd, Blink of an Eye, The Voyager Conspiracy. Anyway, and he's also written an episode of Star Trek Discovery and produced episodes of Star Trek Discovery, and he is a producer on the 2nd season of The Orville and wrote one of the episodes called Sanctuary. So this dude's busy. He knows his sci-fi.
Yeah. He knows his sci-fi, and he's earned his stripes.
Mm-hmm.
By definitely has a lot of credits, and more so than I think any other person that we've had as a staff writer.
Right. Exactly. I agree. Oh, by the way, I am wearing, since it's a special occasion, this is a Bashir episode. I've got my Starfleet scrubs that I'm wearing.
Okay.
There we go. That's Totally
Nice.
Starfleet Medical.
Nice.
All right. Well, we've wasted enough time, Cirroc. Now it's time to get to the name. What did you think of this episode?
Well, you know what? Anne Marie gave us a little heads up saying how bad it would be, and it wasn't as bad as I was expecting. So
Agreed.
let me just start off by saying it exceeded expectations.
Thank you to our associate producer, Anne Marie, for giving us really low expectations so that we can enjoy the episode.
Exactly. And so that, you know, I wasn't so turned off by it, actually. It went by rather smoothly for me. I mean, there weren't moments where I was really lagging too much. I did see it as a kind of a standalone episode,
right,
and I saw it as kind of placed in there. So I could deduce that it was written by, or at least the story was from somewhere else outside of the in-house machinery of the producers. So I could kind of deduce. And the other thing that I thought was a little bit unusual was the directing style of the way they filmed this. And so now you tell me that Alexander Singer was the director. Yeah, so he's somebody that I don't recognize.
I remember saying his name a couple times, but I don't know much beyond that. You don't remember him?
I don't remember him too much, but I do recall that the style in this particular episode was shot differently. I don't know if that's because that's his own personal directing style, or if he was doing it for the purpose of this semi-conscious dream sequence type thing. But I did notice that some of the camera shots and angles were unusual, to say the least.
Say the most. No.
Yeah, they were unusual. I mean, they were. For example, there was shots where Bashir comes in and he sees all of the rest of the crew minus Sisko in one of the quarters, and they're all having this meeting and talking to each other about it. But when he walks in, they kind of keep a tight shot of all of them together. Mm-hmm. So they're all in one shot, Bashir and all the other cast members, Nana and Odo, and they're all in the one shot, and they kind of cross back and forth within the same frame. There's no real camera movement or close-ups or real choreography with the actors. So that was one thing I noticed, and it kind of gives you a confined feel to it, and also gives you an unusual feel. So you do feel like, oh, is this a dream sequence? Is he in his mind? So I could see that on the visual. So they were able to convey what they were trying to accomplish in the story, which is, him battling this semi-conscious state or comatose-like state.
Right.
But they matched it well with the actual camera work.
So Alexander Singer has done 6 Deep Space Nine episodes in total. 2 that we've already covered: Second Sight, which was kind of a rough one; Heart of Stone, which we just did a couple weeks ago with Melissa. That was the one where Nog demands that he get let into Starfleet. And 2 good ones coming up: The Adversary and Starship Down. Also hard time the following season, but that's 2 good ones coming up, so we'll see how those go. And he's also done 10 episodes of Voyager and 6 episodes of Next Generation, so he's definitely in the rotation.
Right.
Oh, my idea for the free-for-all, by the way, stay tuned for the free-for-all, guys, because we will be we're inspired by this. By the way, this was like Inside Out, right? The Pixar movie, the Disney Pixar movie, Inside Out. For those of you that have seen it, it's like, you represent this and you represent that part of my brain and you're this part of my brain. And so what we're going to ask the poor free-for-allers is, what do they represent in the 7th rule machine? Like, what aspect? Are they our conscious? Are they our, dad jokes? That's probably me. So that'll be a fun one to put them on the spot.
Did you say dad jokes or bad jokes?
Either way. I said dad jokes, but it's really, I deserve that.
No, I just had to throw that in there. No, yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I think that's and this is obviously well before Inside Out was ever
Yep.
conceived. And then the other thing that it reminded me of too was the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, I didn't catch that. That's a good point. You're right.
And the Tin Man and not having a heart, and this one not having a brain, and a little bit of that. I think the line that Kira says, which was hilarious to me, and I thought it was one of the better lines of this particular episode. But she says, "A paranoid, a coward, a hothead, and me."
Yeah.
Right. She's like, what kind of and that made me think of like the Wizard of Oz, the coward, the brainless guy, and all of those kinds of characters. So
that's a really good one, yeah. Because I remember that line, but it didn't trigger that for me.
Yeah, that's what it triggered for me, Wizard of Oz.
Oz didn't give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. It's a line from well, we won't say the line. If you guys know what band that is from the 70s that said Oz didn't give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. It's a beautiful song. Okay, I'll just say it's a band called America. They're like a really cool, fun 70s band. Anyway.
Oh, nice. Nice little knowledge there. Speaking of knowledge, I'd like for you to give us a little knowledge on the Lethians. Have we seen them before? What's the background on them?
I have none. It sounds like something we've heard before, but I can't place it. So it might be something where they just mention it, I've got a Lethian freighter trying to come in, or something like that.
Right. But we haven't seen them like featured alien. We know that they have this telepathic ability, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And obviously this electric hands or lightning hands.
Yeah. No, I'll look them up really quickly. But I thought the same thing. Like, have we seen this guy before? What's the story with this guy? Okay, yeah, looks like we have seen a second one in it's next season in the Sword of Kalas, season 4. We see another one called Soto. So up until now, no, we have not seen any, and I don't know if any have ever been mentioned, but I don't think so. That's the extent of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was a cool little character that this person was able to play. I know we heard people say that they didn't like the voice, but I kind of liked the voice. I thought it was a little bit, ominous. But yeah, I mean, they talked about the Lethians being incredibly stubborn, and I don't know what he needed biomimetic gel for.
They never explained that. Yeah.
So that was kind of awkward. The other thing I thought was a little bit weird for me about this particular episode was the very previous episode that we just reviewed had O'Brien facing his own mortality, right? Looking at his own death 5 hours into the future and trying to save himself. So we dealt with somebody who was facing their mortality in the previous episode, and then we go right from there into Bashir now facing almost a similar situation, trying to figure out his own way out of death. Right? It's almost the same concept.
Yeah, it is. It's the same raised stakes of somebody being faced with their own mortality, and they are also the key component in figuring out how to fix it. Whereas usually a lot of times in Star Trek, somebody's dying and it's up to somebody else to save them. These are two in a row that have the theme of they're trying to save their own death kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Which once again, it just seemed awkwardly placed. And maybe the placing of this episode is not in the right spot. Could have been in a different location in the series, and then it might have gone on better. But just following the O'Brien's, the heavily featured O'Brien episode where he's going through almost the exact same thing. I mean, not with the aging process, but just with the mortality thing. So I just felt like it's a little too similar for them to be running these two episodes back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And the other problem I had with that as well is I feel like some of the story arcs of the long-term story arcs get left behind when we deal with these just isolated one-off episodes. And so I do like the carryover of the previous storylines that we've been dealing with the Jemadar and the Dominion. I like those kinds of things carrying in as well, mixing in with these kinds of stories. You know, they could have had a B story, for example.
They did mention the Dominion one. You know, the Dominion did get a NAM today.
Okay.
No people that, you know, just somebody said something like, I don't remember who it was. Maybe Bashir was trying to figure out what happened. He's like, what happened? Did the Dominion attack? Or somebody mentioned the Dominion for sure. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, I mean, that's it. It was just a mention. It was just one sentence. There was no follow up to it. Yeah, this was an episode that could have been done in the first season or the seventh season. It's all kind of the same. I will say something. There were some aspects that I liked about it. Like, number one, it did move quickly for me, surprisingly. There are other episodes, most episodes move more slowly, whether I like them or I like them less. This was one where I was like, oh, are they already coming to the end? I guess it's already, you know, like it moved quickly. Luckily, it moved quickly, which kind of surprised me. It felt like a slower episode than it was. It just went right through it. Another thing was the aging process of Bashir, I think, was a good added element because that showed, you know, the timetable of him getting closer and closer to death, you know, because when he was in a coma, presumably he's getting closer and closer to death, not just with regards to time, but with regards to actual physical health. His body is getting closer and closer to dying out. And so that the metaphor that the body is creating in his mind is him getting older and older and older. I thought that was cool and it was effective. And you were saying the makeup was good for it, right?
I thought the makeup was fantastic. Yeah, I thought he aged well, and they had it in stages. So little grays would start to show up, and then the wrinkling, and so it wasn't just like one night one way and the other day the other way. It was a very gradual thing. So I liked that aspect of it. And going back to the speed and tempo of the way the episode was flowing, I found myself at the 25-minute mark, halfway through the episode, saying, did I really watch 25 minutes worth? So I actually went back and watched it.
Wow.
The first half twice because I thought I missed something. I thought that there was no way that much time had passed.
It flew by, right?
It flew by. Yeah. So I have to say that this particular episode, I don't know for whatever reason, and I can't put my finger on it, but it did fly by. It felt like it was just going by really quickly. So to me, the sign of something that's terrible is when time stands still and
you keep looking at the clock.
Yeah, and I can't get it over with fast enough, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I know this is not terrible, because if it was, I'd be staring at the clock and the minutes would be going by way too slow for me. This was not the case. So it was pretty past that test.
I wonder what it was that made it move quickly, because I noticed the same phenomenon, but I noticed it more around like 30 or 35 minutes when it was like 5 or 10 minutes away from being over. I was like, oh, are we wrapping this up? You know, there was something in the plot that told me they were wrapping it up. Like maybe Bashir had become an old person, or he had already figured out how to, you know, we're clearly starting to wrap it up. And I was like, what happened? What did I miss?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think made it move so quickly? Was it the dissemination of information, how they just let it out bit by bit by bit, so you just kept getting more and more information? Or do you think it was something in the directing style, or the fact that it was kind of in the vein of a thriller, and the thrillers maybe kind of grab our attention more? I don't know.
Well, I would say two things. One, I would say that I didn't really know what was going to happen. I knew that he would eventually live, but I didn't know what was going to happen next. You know, he was being chased down the hallway at some points where he was running from something. And you weren't really sure what scene was coming next, you know?
Right.
Somebody would die, you know, Odo was melting all of a sudden, you know?
He just melted away into goo is what I put.
Yeah. So it was like so, like everywhere I turned, it was something I wasn't expecting. You know, I was like, okay, well, now Kira's dead. Now everybody's died. Quark died, and now it's not Quark, and O'Brien's on the bed, and it's not O'Brien, but it's the Lethian. You know, and so that was the little mystery that they kept us involved, not knowing, the predictive pattern of where things were going to lead you to. That was one of the elements. But I think the biggest element is the fact that it was a dream sequence. And I know from my own experience, I love dream sequences in movies or in television in general because it feels like
Really?
it feels like it's not reality. So you kind of suspend a certain part of your uh, logical linear thinking when you're watching a dream sequence, right? You're like, okay, I expect anything to happen. I expect any character to transform into something else. I don't really accept things on the same basis of the laws of physics that I would normally in a reality situation. So that I think is one of the main elements because it was a dream sequence and I realized that all the characters were out of character. I think that made it push a lot faster.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. I've got another thing that might have made it go quickly. We're going to have to say that on the other side of the break, though. We just have a few seconds left. I do want to give a quick shout out. We want to say hello to our good friend, Miss Chelsea Rind, who has been with us since, I think, day one, right? I mean, she's been with us since the very beginning, and she's always been so fun and so supportive and talking about like rats and cats and lizards and snakes and caterpillars and whatever weird things she happens to have that day.
And she's a great friend of Aaron, the late great Aron Eisenberg, and she's been by Melissa's side. So a lot of love here from the Seventh Rule to her.
Yeah, we love Chelsea, and it's always great to see her. And we're so happy that she's been with us since literally the beginning because of her friendship with Aron. And anytime we have good friends of Aron sticking around with us, it makes it feel like he's that much closer to us. So thank you, Chelsea. So let's take a quick break, like lightning fast break, and we'll be right back with the seventh rule, or on the seventh rule, whatever.